already in week 9. I forget to put the week on here sometimes, but we are in week 9. So almost a third of the way through the school year. All right, are y'all doing well today? Middle of the week, kind of middle of the semester. I always felt like October in the middle of a semester was the longest month, it felt like, in school. You just kind of, you're in your routine. There's not really anything close coming up like a Thanksgiving break or anything. Midterms are happening right now if you have those. We don't have one in here. But I always felt like October was kind of a rut month for the fall semester. November comes and you're looking forward to Thanksgiving, and December comes and it's wrapping up. But October's kind of a bleh feeling month. Yeah, I hope we have Grace come in here in just a few minutes. She's going to start us off with her chapter summary. We're doing chapters 1 through 5. The book is so short, we only have 2 weeks that we're working on it. So Grace is doing chapters 1 through 5, and Rebecca, she asked me to check. She's doing next week's chapter summary, chapter 6 through 10. Only 10 chapters in this book. All right. But we'll open up with a word of prayer as we're waiting on Grace, and if we need to, we'll circle back around. They're very short. Some of the later chapters are a little longer, but it's a very quick read. Have you guys found that to be true? It took me no time at all to read through it. All right. Well, do you guys have any prayer requests that you want to offer up today? There's Zachary. Hi, Zach. I like your emoji. I've got a prayer request. All right, good, Sophia. The hurricane that just came through Florida, and really all the southern states were affected by the rain and everything, but the place that the eye came right over was my hometown, and there's quite a bit of devastation. Only 2% of the whole county that I was born and raised in has electricity right now. Trees are down everywhere. No, only one death to report, and that was somebody who had a heart attack during the storm, so it wasn't like in direct relation to the storm. Yeah, it was the winds were 5 miles per hour, um, 5 miles per hour less than a category 5. So it was like right at the very worst category 4 you could have. Yep. So if y'all don't mind, I'm gonna lift them up in prayer. I've been doing it all week, but we'll pray for them. There's Grace. Yay, she's here. Mom coming back from Florida. Yes. Yeah, Rebecca. Some of the places are just completely gone. Like you can't even tell that there was anything there. If you'll look up online, if you want to see some of what's going on, look up Mexico Beach. There are before and after pictures that are on the internet for Mexico Beach, and it's just unrecognizable. That's about 45 minutes from my house where I grew up in. So it's pretty rough, pretty rough. People are, folks are rallying around, getting them supplies. Everybody has food and water and everything, but it's just, the damage is going to be something to recover from. And let's not forget our friends on the East Coast, the Carolinas, who are still recovering from Hurricane Florence. Man, it just seems like a couple of really rough hits this year. I don't see anybody else who came up with any prayer requests. So let's open up with a word of prayer. And then Grace, I'm glad you popped in here so that you can do your chapter summaries. That's right after prayer. So let's pray together, guys. Lord, I thank you for everybody who's here today. I pray for anybody who's not, for whatever reason, they're not in live class. I pray that everything's okay and that they watch the recording successfully, and that they get everything out of it that they need to. Father, I want to lift up all of those who are dealing with the aftermath of these 2 big hurricanes that have hit the American coast, for Florence and Michael. Lord, I pray that everybody's safe in their efforts to recover from these storms, and that life gets back to normal as soon as possible. And Lord, we thank you for the love and help that you have shown through the other followers of Christ that have helped their brothers and sisters out in these times of need. Father, I pray that today's class goes smoothly for everybody, that our discussions are they're deep and lively, and that we have just a good time and we walk away with something new that we never realized before. And these things I ask in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, Grace, you ready for chapter summaries? Yeah, she says. Okay, I'm going to give you a microphone. You start whenever you are ready. Actually, I'm going to make you a presenter. There we go. That way you can control the slides.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is my Animal Farm chapter summary, chapters 1 through 5. Oh, it's really small in here. Okay. Well, anyway, so Mr. Jones is the owner of Manor Farm, and you can kind of tell that he drinks too much, and he tends to be forgetful, probably from drinking. And the animals on his farm plan to meet in the big barn that night, when Mr. Jones is safely out of the way. So when they all get to the barn, Major, the prize middle white boar, tells the animals about his dream, teaches them the Beasts of England song, and tells them how they should overthrow the human race and have a rebellion. So Major asks them whether wild creatures should be like their friends or their enemies, and the animals all vote that animals like rats and rabbits should be their friends. Alright, and so in chapter 2, 3 nights later, Major dies, and so the animals decide that, or they're not sure like when the rebellion will take place, but they want to prepare for it. So the pigs are the ones who help teach and organize the others for preparing for the rebellion, and they also have several nights a week in which they have secret meetings. And at those meetings, the pigs talk about like the principles of animalism, and they try to answer any of the other random questions that the other animals have. And so the past few days, Mr. Jones has neglected the animals and forgot to feed them for days. And so eventually they just can't really take it any longer. So one of the cows breaks down the door, the store shed door, and all the animals begin eating the food from the bins. However, Mr. Jones wakes up and gets some of his men, and they start whipping the animals, but the animals are so hungry that they kick and they chase the men away, and before they knew it, the farm was theirs. And let me see. And so eventually the animals like start to explore things around the farm, and the pigs even learn how to read and write from like a writing book. And so the pigs name the farm Animal Farm, and they write down the 7 commandments so all the animals can see them. And in chapter 3, the animals begin the harvest and work hard to finish it. However, the pigs actually don't really help. They don't do any of the work. They just supervise. And so the animals have more food to eat, and they are happier now that they can get what they work for instead of having a lot of it taken away. And they decided that on Sundays there would be no work, but instead they would have like a special ceremony where they would raise the flag, and they would have meetings about what they would do for the coming week, and they would vote on different things. And so Snowball sets up many animal committees, but most of them fail. However, many of the animals do learn how to read, or at least learn some of the alphabet. And the pigs take the milk and apples for themselves, which a lot of the other animals thought they would get some too. But the pig's excuse was that milk and apples are good for them, good for their brains, and that they need to think a lot because they set up all the things. And yeah, and in chapter 4, the farmers who have farms near Animal Farm fear of the rebellion that happened there, and they wanted to make sure that their animals wouldn't do something like that to them. And the animals at nearby farms start to sing the Beast of England song and start acting up. But whenever they did that, they would get punished for it. And so Mr. Jones, his men, the men from Foxwood Farm and the men from Finchfield Farm, try to take over Mr. Jones's farm again. We take it. So Mr. Jones ends up shooting a sheep and kills it, but all the other animals all fiercely attack the men, and they scare them away. And so they won the Battle of Cowshed, is what they called it. And they decided to take Mr. Jones's gun and fire it on the anniversary of the Battle of Cowshed and on the anniversary of the rebellion. And in chapter 5, we learn that Molly runs away. She was she was accused of letting a man pet her nose and talk to her. And she never really helped with anything. She kind of always got away with things, and she ran off to the drinking pool to look at herself in the reflection. So she ran away. And Snowball and Napoleon had many controversies. However, the biggest controversy was definitely about the windmill. Snowball wants to build a windmill. Napoleon does not. And it seems like most of the animals agree that the windmill should be made, especially since they see Snowball making all the plans for it and getting everything set up. And Snowball and Napoleon also disagree on what they should do to defend the farm. Napoleon wants the animals to learn how to use firearms for defending the farm. However, Snowball wants to send out pigeons and stir up rebellions among the animals of the other farms, so that if there's rebellions happening everywhere, they might not even have to defend themselves. So Snowball would have probably certainly won the vote for the windmill, but when he finished his speech, Napoleon called over 9 big dogs to chase away and probably even kill Snowball. Thankfully, Snowball managed to escape through a hole in the hedge, but he was never seen again. So, yeah. And Napoleon seems to have just taken charge of the farm and all the animals, and he decides that he wants to build a windmill. He decides that he actually wants to build the windmill after all, and Squealer, the other pig, tries to defend Napoleon by saying that he actually always wanted to build the windmill, and that Snowball actually took Napoleon's ideas from his papers. And so it kind of just ends with Squealer lecturing all the other animals about how great Napoleon is, and that's it. So.
Thank you, Grace. Great job with that. I like how you gave details outside of just the bullet points. You kind of had your bullet point, and then you kept on expanding on the ideas. Yeah, that was a very good job. Very nice. So, just out of curiosity, I'm going to turn on the whiteboard. You guys can use the whiteboard anytime during class that you want. Yes. How do you like the book so far? What's your opinion of it? Ten out of 10. Wow. All right. Good and pretty good. Yeah. 8 out of 10. Still a good score, I think. Okay. Can you, Ian? Ian is Infinity out of 10. Okay, you really like it. So you think it's predictable, huh, Ian? Yeah. Okay. Couldn't stop reading it? Did you really? Okay, that brings me to my next question, my follow-up question for this. Give me a green check if you couldn't help yourself if you've already finished more than 5 chapters. Jeremiah and Zachary. Okay, it's okay. You were only supposed to read through five chapters, but if you kept on reading, that is perfectly fine too. I know it's one of those that you really can't put down. Did you feel like the book is patronizing at all? Like it's too simple? Anybody feel that way? No? Okay. That's good. That's good. I wondered if that would be the case for you guys because, okay, Blake says he likes books like this. Okay, Rebecca says maybe a little bit. Maybe. Okay, Grace. I'm glad that you thought that. And to me, that is the genius of George Orwell. I don't think just any writer can pick up a pen and make a story this simple seem this complex because I told you guys I read this story this book to my own daughter whenever she was 8 years old. So, and she, there were a lot of things that were over her head, but the basic plot of the story was not. She could follow along with these talking animals and the things that were happening in this story. So, it's like it's a book for all ages almost. It's a little bit rough in some places. There were some things that we had to skip over, the battles and stuff we had to skip over because it did get a little bit gruesome. But for the most part, the things that are happening, she followed right along with it. Now she didn't understand all of the symbolism and she didn't understand all the meanings behind, them the commandments and the things we're going to discuss today. Uh, but if you're feeling like it's a little too simple for you, hopefully after the discussion today, you'll realize, oh, there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. Because it's not just about a bunch of animals taking over a farm. That's the surface of it, but there's a lot underneath those rippling waves. Okay, so I'm gonna have you guys pick a couple of characters. It doesn't matter. You can pick them at random. We've got 7 people in here, but you see we've got lots of characters to choose from. I want you to tell me what that character reminds you of. If it reminds you of a bit of human nature, tell us about that. Or if it reminds you of a specific person, tell us about that. Hopefully we'll get a little bit of detail about all of the animals because they all represent something. Mr. Jones is definitely the antagonist of the story. Fervent supporters. Oh man, we even call people sheep sometimes, don't we? Don't be a sheep. Mm. Hmm. Notice that I have the pigs on here, but I don't have Snowball and Napoleon just yet. We're going to talk about them separately. Is Sidekick or Teacher's Pet going with Moses? Looks like it is. So who are Clover, Muriel, and Benjamin? Anybody remember what kind of animals they are? I worried that naming the names might be a little hard to pinpoint some of them because they're not great big characters. Mhm. Mhm. Benjamin is the donkey. He's old, very old. I think one of the oldest animals on the farm now that Major is dead. Clover is the other horse. Yep. Speaking of cats. He's feeling frisky today. I'm not sure why. He's usually not a pest, but today he's kind of being a pest. Aren't you? Aren't you, Dee? What's the matter with you? How about Muriel? Who is Muriel? What? Ah, okay. All right. What kind of animal is Muriel? Do you remember? He's the goat. He let's see, Clover, Muriel, and Benjamin, Moses, they're mentioned in parts, but they're not nearly as big of characters as the pigs and Boxer and all of them are. Looks like we've got a little bit for everybody. Yeah, old Major. He dies. He's kind of the prophet, excuse me, of the animals. He's the one who has the dream that the rebellion's going to happen. And he is wise and optimistic, but he doesn't see anything through. Any characters in history, maybe even in the Bible, that Major makes you think of? Maybe not. I will tell you that all of these characters do represent specific people in history. Some of them I'm familiar with, some of them I'm not so familiar with because the Russian Revolution is not a great big, it's not one that I understand. What is wrong with you? Oh my gosh. During the break, I'm going to have to throw him outside. But they all represent specific people, but I'm not as familiar with the Russian Revolution, which is what this book is really based on. It can represent other people, though. Okay. Rebecca says, now not to confuse it with Moses the crow or the raven, but Major reminds her of Moses in the Bible, she says. I like that. Yeah, just kind of, he's the one who is the prophet. He's speaking for maybe a higher power. Maybe the dream can be a higher power. But he never really gets to see the promised land like Moses never did get to see the promised land, right? So Major doesn't either. He doesn't get to see the rebellion, but he does predict it. Okay, Gray says maybe the people from the story of Daniel and the Lion's Den, that story. Oh, okay. For the crow, right? Yep, we'll get to Moses down there. Mr. Jones is definitely the bad guy. Tyrannical government. I like how you say that. Maybe a dictator, even. The dogs. Man, you guys put a lot on the dogs. The dogs are an interesting set of characters, right? Because they never say anything. They're rarely a part of the actual action of the story, but they're always a presence, right? Rebecca, that is exactly what the puppies are. They are the Hitler Youth and eventually become the SS, right? They are the police. Yeah, the police forces in World War II. Kind of, and I like how you put brainwashed, kind of Hitler Youth, the young communist, easy to imprint on when they're young, which is why Napoleon took them from their mothers when they were young and kind of hid them away. And notice that it mentioned that everybody kind of forgot about them. Because if they had seen what Napoleon was turning them into whenever they were young, they might have tried to intervene. But they kind of forgot about it. Out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. They had the muscle, That's exactly right. And Napoleon used them as such, especially in chapter 5, which is what Grace mentioned. She said that he used the dogs to chase his opposition, Snowball, his only competitor really, out of town. Yeah. And they don't really care, which is the brainwashed part, right? They don't really care what they're doing or why they're doing it. They're just doing what they were trained to do. They're kind of a scary element in the story. Very frightening for a group of people to act that way. The pigs.